Welcome back to Pokemon episode summaries. Today, I'll be doing episode 337, is a Disaster of Disguise. The episode begins not with Ash and the gang, but of a very exhausted and injured Roselia, who was revealed to belong to Drew. It was Drew's Roselia, because we saw that a battle was going on between Drew and a mysterious trainer in a black outfit wearing a Dusclops mask. The man in the Dusclops mask was, ironically enough, using a Dusclops against Drew's Roselia, and the two of them were battling in a canyon that acted as a dump where people would put their trash that was close to Verdant Turf Town. We haven't really seen Drew like this before, but believe it or not, he was nervous as he was losing, and the masked guy who he was facing laughed at Drew's nervousness and stated that Drew wasn't putting up much of a fight, and he expected more of a fight from a so-called talented Pokemon coordinator who was so popular. Dusclops then uses Shadow Punch, causing its eye to glow as it hits Roselia straight on, giving Drew only time to scream in horror before Roselia was severely injured by the attack. And then Dusclops used a Will-O-Wisp as well to finish off Roselia by sending it flying and knocking it into the ground below. Therefore, meaning Roselia was defeated, so Drew goes up to grab Roselia and hug it to comfort it as he recalls it into his Pokeball. Just as the trainer in the black outfit starts making wind blow that was full of black petals, and then he laughs at Drew's loss, making fun of him, stating that he would have defeated Drew even in a contest battle, and then as soon as the wind picks up to like 100,000 kilometers an hour, it eventually dissipates, and by the time Drew could open his eyes, since the wind was gone and no longer forcing them shut, he saw that the trainer in his Dusclops had suddenly disappeared. Meanwhile, apparently, registration for the Verdant Turf Town Pokemon contest was at the Verdant Turf Town Pokemon Center, and Ash and the gang had just arrived there, with May hoping to register with Skitty as her main Pokemon. Just as Ash and the gang entered the Pokemon Center, though, Max was the first one to notice Drew, pointing him out to May, Brock, and Ash, as they all noticed that Drew was talking with Nurse Joy, while Chansey was holding a stretcher next to Nurse Joy, and was giving all of his Pokeballs to her. May was very amazed to see Drew, not knowing that he would have been participating at the Verdant Turf contest as well, as Ash and the gang all greet him, and Drew, relatively calmly, greets them back. May was already certain that Drew had to be entering the contest, but Brock asked him anyways, wondering if he was planning on participating. And much to Ash and the gang's surprise, Drew actually informs everyone that he would not be participating in the Verdant Turf contest. He initially was going to, but not anymore. At first, Ash and the gang go to question Drew on why he wasn't entering, but May then has her question answered for her, as she observed that Drew's Roselia was very injured, as she watched Nurse Joy hold it in her arms, trying to comfort it. May asks what happened to it, leading Drew to explain that it was absolutely obliterated in a battle he recently had. Also adding that Roselia's current status was the reason why he wasn't entering the contest, since it wouldn't be fit to battle. Drew then turns to leave, explaining that he battled a trainer with his Dusclops, and the trainer claimed to be a coordinator apparently, and added that he had a mask as well that looked like a Dusclops, and warned Ash and the gang to watch out for this mysterious coordinator, explaining that he apparently went by the pseudonym Phantom. May was shocked about all this information, and obviously wanted to ask for more information, but Drew left before May could say anything. May then went outside the Pokemon Center with Ash and the gang, deciding to train with her Skitty, since she knew that she would have to be prepared if there was a coordinator even stronger than Drew, and she declared that no masked coordinator was going to stop her, more confident than ever. And Ash then stated how he wanted to battle this masked coordinator since he seemed tough, and he was up for a challenge. Meanwhile, as for Team Rocket, Jessie was training as well, preparing to enter her Dustox into the Verdant Turf contest as well, because, of course she wanted to enter. Jessie then requested that Meowth and James train with her, so that Dustox could get some experience before the contest, but James rebutted that training would be a waste of time, reminding Jessie of what had happened at the last contest, and assuming that what happened then would just happen again. But Jessie assured James and Meowth that she would win this time, and explained her plan with Dustox to win, going over all of the moves that she planned to use. Although James got bored by this, not caring about contests whatsoever still, so he zoned out, and when he zoned out, he noticed Ash and the gang in the distance. Anyways, as for Ash and the gang, May had just released Skitty from its Pokeball, and it immediately started chasing its tail, as usual, although May told it to stop, stating that they had something more important to do, which was practice extremely hard for the upcoming Verdant Turf contest, and Skitty actually began to pay attention to this, becoming interested. May then instructed Skitty to practice Blizzard, since, just as Dr. Abby had suggested last episode, Blizzard would probably really help with the contest. Skitty obliges as it jumps into the air and uses Blizzard, but its aim was off since it was still inexperienced with it, and it managed to hit Ash and the gang, covering them in a huge blast of wind and snow. May yelled for it to stop, and it immediately did so. May was annoyed, not wanting to get hit by Blizzard anymore, so she declared that it didn't really matter if Blizzard's aim was a little off, the attack worked, and that's all that mattered, so no more training was necessary on it. May decided to change gears with practicing with Skitty, changing to the appeal round training, deciding to go with the ball juggling technique that Dr. Abby had showed her and her Delcatty doing, and we then see a flashback of Dr. Abby teaching Skitty how to juggle balls in the first place, with Delcatty being there as well as all the Pokemon pictures that were on Dr. Abby's wall that showed her the different positions for her massages. Anyways, May ordered Skitty to use Double Slap to juggle the balls with her tail, as Max advised May to always keep Dr. Abby's advice in mind, which was partially that the coordinator must know how to use attacks, and use them to make them both effective in battle and beautiful. And May then remembered the rest of Dr. Abby's advice, as she proceeded to throw the first ball for Skitty to hit with Double Slap, and it did so successfully. having readied its tail. So May quickly threw the second ball, and Skitty was now able to juggle those two. So May decided to try something she hadn't done before, which was toss a third ball, and Skitty managed to juggle this one as well, making May very happy. So she decided to test her luck some more and throw even more balls, but suddenly Skitty dropped one ball, and the rest soon followed in a domino effect on the ground, annoying May, but she simply told Skitty to try again, not wanting to make Skitty upset. Meanwhile, back with Team Rocket, they were spying on Ash and the gang, and May practicing with Skitty from behind a trash can. And upon seeing May's disastrous incident with Skitty just then, Jessie remarked that she and her Dustox could easily win the contest, since they could beat May easily, and Jessie thought that May would be her only competition apparently. Unbeknownst to Team Rocket, not only were they spying on Ash and the gang, but a young boy was spying on them a few feet behind from a bush, and he was watching May as well. Anyways, back with May and Skitty. Skitty had once again been able to juggle 3 balls, so May tried once again to toss more, specifically 2 more, and Skitty managed to juggle every one of them. It could now juggle 5 balls at once, making May extremely happy, as she commanded it to try and spin while juggling now, to make the performance extra beautiful. And Skitty excitedly obliges, spinning around, although Skitty got a little too excited and got out of control, causing it to trip and drop all the balls on the ground as it fell, making May a little embarrassed. But suddenly, she along with the rest of the gang was startled as the black petal whirlwind from before withdrew started to appear once again, and right after this, the masked coordinator, who called himself the Phantom, that battled Drew, appeared. And he proceeded to taunt May, stating that she had no reason to think she could win or get excited about the contest because he was going to be the one to win. May instantly recognized the dude as the Phantom Mask Coordinator that Drew was talking about, because, you know, he just looked like a Phantom Mask Coordinator, especially since he was masked and in a black outfit and entering a contest. The Phantom then challenged May to a battle as Team Rocket watched from behind the trash can, wondering who the heck the masked dude thought he was, challenging Ash and the gang. Only they could evilly break in and disrupt Ash and the gang's peace and attack them. Anyways, before May could say anything, either to accept or deny the Phantom's challenge, Ash stepped up, introducing himself, and requested the Phantom for a match. This led to the Phantom to warn Ash that he was a very, very good battler and had won many contests, so that's why he wanted to battle May, since May was also doing contests. He essentially wanted to battle anyone else doing contests. Brock questioned the Phantom on how he won so many contests, but before the Phantom could answer, Ash just interrupted Brock and demanded a match from the Phantom still, not caring that he wasn't a coordinator himself. He just wanted to battle. The Phantom, wanting to crush Ash at least, to put him in his place, accepted. So it was now time for the battle to begin, and Ash sent his Pikachu while the Phantom sent out his Dusclops, leaving Ash to scan it with his Pokédex to learn more about it, since he had never seen one before. The Phantom then requested that the battle be like a contest battle, meaning that the battle had a 5-minute time limit, and Ash accepted, as he told Pikachu to go in for the first attack, rushing in with a quick attack. But much to Ash's surprise, the quick attack does no damage whatsoever, leaving Max to warn Ash that since Dusclops was a ghost-type Pokemon, normal type attacks like quick attack didn't work against it. With Ash caught off guard, Dusclops then took the opportunity to send a whole bunch of shadow punches at Pikachu, striking it with no issue, as Pikachu was caught too off guard to dodge. Ash tried to tell Pikachu to get away, but it was literally caught in all the shadow punches, leading the Phantom to order Dusclops to use one last super strong shadow punch to finish Pikachu off, as Max commented how bad the situation looked, and suddenly, a black limo appeared out of nowhere, speeding down the road, beeping insanely loudly. The Phantom seemed scared by this, and immediately recalled his Dusclops. Brock asked what the fuck he was doing, abandoning the battle when he was about to win, but the Phantom just laughed, and declared the battle a draw, and disappeared, as he made the whirlwind of black petals show up again, and he disappeared while this wind occurred, almost blowing over Team Rocket as they hung onto the trash can and Ash and the gang. Right after the wind fades, the limo doors open, and a rich-looking woman jumped out, yelling extremely loudly, almost as loud as the beeping. This woman's name happened to be Miss Grimm, and she noticed that the Phantom hadn't completely disappeared yet and was running away, so she ran to him to catch him, as the Phantom ran as fast as he could to escape Miss Grimm. While the Phantom was running, however, he hit a tree branch, which cut his glove, and he stopped running to examine the painful cut that had formed on his hand. This allows Miss Grimm to catch up to the Phantom, as she yells at him to stop running, but the Phantom merely gets over the pain in his hand and runs away again, and when Miss Grimm tried to follow, she ended up tripping over because she was so clumsy, and her body smashes against the ground, allowing the Phantom to disappear. Immediately after falling, she finds a pencil on the ground with a Pokeball tip and picks it up, even though she barely had any energy left after her fall. Ash and the gang had caught up to Miss Grimm and the Phantom by now, although the Phantom was obviously gone, and apparently Miss Grimm had an attachment to the pencil in some way, because she recognized it. Ash then questioned Miss Grimm, who was still laying on the ground, what the fuck was up with her and why she was chasing after the Phantom, as she gets back up and starts yelling and screaming at Ash and the gang, demanding to know what Ash and the gang had done to her son Timmy, as she started shaking Ash and Pikachu, literally trying to force an answer out of Ash. Also demanding that they admit themselves to be related to the Phantom, and also asks them to tell her who the fuck the Phantom was. Going on a rant about how people had told her 1,000 times when she told them about the Phantom that the Phantom was probably her son Timmy, and she refused to believe this, so she wanted to find out who the fuck the Phantom or any of its acquaintances actually was, and what they had done to her son Timmy. Ash and the gang didn't know what the fuck to answer, since they weren't related to the Phantom in any way, shape, or form, so they just stood there, looking confused, leading Miss Grimm to get mad as she shook Ash and Pikachu some more, although Brock, nervous that he would end up getting shaken as well, nervously tried to explain to Miss Grimm that they didn't know anything, and were just random trainers who had just encountered the Phantom for the first time, just now. With May adding on that they were traveling trainers and weren't even from Verdant Turf Town, they just happened to be crossing through so she could participate in the contest. Miss Grimm realized her mistake, laughing at it, as she immediately stopped shaking Ash and put him down nicely, introducing herself as Miss Grimm formally. Brock then questions Miss Grimm on who the fuck her son Timmy was, leading Miss Grimm to clarify, as she started to cry, wiping tears with a handkerchief, that Timmy was her only son. And Timmy had been acting strange lately, even having stopped going to school entirely, so Miss Grimm hired a detective to spy on Timmy to see what was going on. Yeah, that was nice. Anyways, after the detective watched Timmy for multiple days, the detective reported back to Miss Grimm that whenever Timmy would suddenly disappear, the detective would always get flustered and startled, as right after Timmy disappeared, the Phantom appeared. And with this information, Miss Grimm was able to come to the conclusion that either her son was actually the Phantom, which she refused to believe, or the Phantom had merely just dragged Timmy away from the area and took his place for a little bit to watch out in case anyone was watching them, but the Phantom had basically put a bad influence on Timmy or some shit and made him join him. Adding that she didn't want Timmy to join the Phantom because she figured that someone like the Phantom would be up to no good, doing dangerous activities, since she had heard rumors of him messing around in Verdant Turf Town and ruining the place. Ash and the gang questioned Miss Grimm on why Timmy just couldn't be the Phantom if he was disappearing whenever the Phantom appeared. However, Miss Grimm remained adamant that there was no way someone like her son could be a troublemaker like the Phantom, and claimed that her main goal was to stop the Phantom from influencing her son anymore, believing that the Phantom was influencing her son to like battling with Pokemon, and apparently she didn't want her son to like battling with Pokemon, since she feared that that meant that he would stray from the path that she wanted for him. Yeah, she totally didn't sound like a bitch whatsoever. Anyways, Miss Grimm then asked Ash if he happened to be a Pokemon trainer, and although Ash was nervous too, since it seems as though Miss Grimm didn't like Pokemon trainers, when he honestly told her that he was, just as he expected, the woman, Miss Grimm, immediately lunged at him again and held him up by his jacket, along with Pikachu again, although she wasn't angry and just started asking questions about the Phantom. Specifically asking if, since Ash was a trainer, if he could help track down the Phantom and discover his identity so that the Phantom could be punished and stop influencing Timmy. Ash then clarified that Brock and May were trainers as well, and Max may as well have been one. So asked them if they would help identify who the Phantom was, and they agreed. So, Miss Grimm then proceeded to ask Ash and the gang for their hypothesis as to who the Phantom could be, although she was gripping Ash's shoulder really hard and intensely when she said this, so Ash said that he couldn't come up with any goddamn hypothesis, not only because he had no clue who the Phantom could be, but because he was in so much pain because his shoulder was being gripped so hard. So, Miss Grimm apologized. Meanwhile, Team Rocket were spying on Ash and the gang from some bushes and had heard Miss Grimm and Ash and the gang's conversation. James wondered why Timmy would want to have a secret identity, believing that Timmy was in fact the Phantom. Jessie, on the other hand, believed that Timmy wasn't the Phantom, and rebutted to James that having a secret identity could be a good idea, as she had a vision of herself in a skimpy purple outfit with feathers, and declared that she wanted to be known as the beautiful coordinator, apparently in that outfit, leading James and Meowth to sigh in annoyance upon hearing this, as Wobbuffet forcibly popped out of its Pokeball. Just then, as Team Rocket used their binoculars while spying, they managed to spot Miss Grimm wearing very, very, very shiny rings that looked very expensive. And they then overheard Miss Grimm say that she would pay Ash and the gang a lot of money if they managed to catch the Phantom. This amused Jessie, who believed that she could take Miss Grimm's expensive rings as payment and therefore add them to her beautiful coordinator alternate identity, which made James and Meowth sigh once again, although Jessie declared that she was going to do everything in her power to search for the Phantom so that she could get that prize from Miss Grimm, and forced James and Meowth to come along. Meanwhile, back with Ash and the gang, despite Miss Grimm being adamant that Timmy wasn't the Phantom, Ash and the gang believed otherwise still, so they requested that Miss Grimm take them to her home, where Timmy likely was, so that they could confront Timmy about him potentially being the Phantom. Miss Grimm agreed to take Ash and the gang to her place, but only because she believed that the Phantom may try and take Timmy from there, and they may go somewhere, and Ash and the gang would be able to confront the Phantom before this happened. So, Miss Grimm took Ash and the gang to her place, which was a huge-ass mansion with its own private garden, its own gazebo, private fountain. It was fucking gorgeous. Ash and the gang were already enamored by the fact that they got to ride to the mansion in the limousine that Miss Grimm had showed up in, but they were truly amazed now, as they then entered the mansion through a huge-ass door to find the huge-ass, beautiful building with multiple floors and a ceiling window. Immediately upon entry, Miss Grimm yelled for her son to come downstairs, and Ash and the gang and Miss Grimm soon entered the lobby. Upstairs, Timmy was in his room, bandaging a wound on his hand that he had acquired, and he was writing down in his notebook the fact that he had beaten Drew. And he looked him up in a Pokemon Coordinator magazine to state some facts about Drew for his notes, to make it seem even more impressive that he had beat him. And he also was about to take notes on a Pikachu that he had battled, admitting that it was pretty tough, and he wanted to write down information on it. But before he could do this, he realized that his pencil was missing when he went to go pull it out of his pocket. So Timmy got annoyed, because now he couldn't write down any notes on Pikachu, or he couldn't even write down the fact that he had beaten a tough coordinator, Drew. Also, I should mention that this boy, Timmy, was actually the same one that had been watching when the Phantom showed up in the first place, and was watching when May was training her Skitty. And this, combined with the fact that he was writing down that he battled a Pikachu and he had beat Drew, I mean, I think it was pretty obvious that Timmy was the Phantom, right? But anyways, Miss Grimm then yelled for Timmy to come downstairs, really annoyed and angry now, ordering that he come down immediately, leading Timmy to realize that he probably should, even though he was hesitant, as he didn't want to be around his angry mother, but nonetheless, he came down and greeted her, also seeing Ash in the gang, as Miss Grimm introduced him to them, and asked if he happened to know them. Since she thought that if Timmy was at least in the area of the Phantom, if not the Phantom himself, then he must have saw Ash in the gang when he was running away. Or, he would have been battling Ash in the gang. But even though Timmy had saw Ash in the gang before, he claims that he had never met them, and says he was busy in his room studying, and went to go back. But Miss Grimm stopped Timmy before he could go back, pulling out the pencil she had found, and claiming that she knew it was Timmy's signature pencil, and he couldn't have been studying without it. Timmy admitted that the pen was in fact his, shocked that his mother, of all people, had found it, even though he lost it, and asked her where she found it. Miss Grimm then got angry, realizing that if this pencil really was Timmy's, and the pencil had been dropped by the Phantom, then he very well could be the Phantom. And became angry at this, as she obviously didn't want Timmy to be associated with the Phantom, let alone be it. So she demanded that Timmy reveal his secret identity as the Phantom, making Timmy shocked, as he tried to explain that he wasn't the Phantom, and came to the conclusion that the pencil that his mother had found must not have actually been his pencil, but merely just the same one owned by the Phantom, stating that him and the Phantom must have just coincidentally had the same pencil. Although Timmy's mother, Miss Grimm, refused to believe this, and proceeded to beat Timmy up, trying to force him to admit his secret identity, leading Ash and the gang to debate if they should call Child Protective Services for Timmy's mom being a child abuser. Especially as Timmy's mom literally kicked him down the hallway and tried to get him to still admit that he was the Phantom, when she then noticed the bandage on his hand. Particularly his right hand, the hand that the Phantom had been cut on. So this just further solidified that Timmy was the Phantom. Miss Grimm immediately grabbed her son's arm and pulled him towards her, ordering him to explain what had happened to his hand, basically wanting to get a full confession out of him that he was in fact the Phantom. Although Miss Grimm doesn't get a straight answer, as Timmy simply tells his mother that he just happened to hurt himself randomly and breaks free from his mother's grasp, and she watches in shock at this, as he never used to be able to run from her grasp since she was so much bigger than his skinny bitch ass. And sure enough though, Timmy ran to his room and shut the door. Seeing this, Miss Grimm, Timmy's mother, had to take a breather in the living room as she sat on the couch and let Ash and the gang sit on the couch as well. Timmy's mom proceeds to vent about how she really hated abusing her son like the way she was doing now, but she felt it was the only way to discipline her son now, since he just kept acting different, and was frightening her with how different he was acting, and how suspicious he was acting. Admitting that just like Ash and the gang, she now thought that Timmy was in fact the Phantom, since he had a cut on his right hand, just like the Phantom did. Although Brock, May, and Max pointed out that Timmy didn't seem as strong as how the Phantom appeared, as he appeared very, very intimidating, and a skinny-ass bitch like Timmy didn't appear that way. If anything, Timmy appeared more so like a trainee, and upon realizing this, Ash questioned Miss Grimm on if Timmy was training to be a trainer or a coordinator. However, Miss Grimm gets extremely angry when Ash brings up the concept of Timmy being a trainer, and begins to shake him immensely again, stating that she would never let her son Timmy do anything related to Pokemon whatsoever, since she viewed them as only a distraction for Timmy, since she wanted him to divert all of his effort into studying to become the CEO of her company. Brock, however, didn't like this idea, stating that, if anything, Pokemon could help Timmy study, since Pokemon could be a great way to learn things about life in general, and if Timmy knew more about life, then he could probably be a better CEO, and suggested that Miss Grimm tone down her thoughts about Pokemon. But Miss Grimm simply told Brock, along with the rest of the gang, to stay in their lane and just focus on identifying either Timmy or someone else as the Phantom, and not worry about what she wanted for her son. And she then storms off, as everyone watches awkwardly and uncomfortable by all her yelling. Ash and Brock brought up how Timmy was certainly not happy living in this household with an angry mother, and suggested that they do something, although Max was too scared to do something because he wasn't fond of Miss Grimm's yelling at all, and May wanted to practice for her contest some more. Ash eventually agreed, and so did Brock, so they all went to leave, but suddenly, out of practically nowhere, Timmy's father, Tommy Grimm, appeared, after having been in the kitchen this whole time, preparing himself some tea, which he was still drinking. Ash questioned who he was, leading Timmy's father to introduce himself as such, and this freaked Ash and the gang out, as they thought that he would be just as uptight about Timmy inheriting the family business and becoming the CEO as Miss Grimm, and therefore he would be as rude, but he assures them otherwise, admitting that he knew Tommy was unhappy, and he really wanted to do something to change that, as he then escorted Ash and the gang into his office room, informing them that he had overheard that they were looking for the identity of the Phantom, and that he had a clue in his office, as he then opened up a drawer and took out the same mask and outfit that the Phantom wears. And then Tommy revealed that he used to be the Phantom until his son became the Phantom, so Timmy was the Phantom. Ash and the gang were confused, so they asked for more details, leading Tommy to talk about how he himself used to love Pokemon as much as his son did, and he was once a coordinator as well. This led Ash and the gang to ask why Tommy was no longer a coordinator and no longer loved Pokemon as much as he did, so Tommy began to explain. In an exposition dump, love those. Basically, he started with when he first met Miss Grimm, his wife, when they were both really young and more fit, and eventually they fell deeply in love and did everything together, although, despite their connection, he never told Miss Grimm about the fact that he was a coordinator or about the fact that he had Pokemon, because he had found out that Miss Grimm wasn't fond of Pokemon at all, so it turned out that she just didn't even like them. It wasn't even related to just her wanting Timmy to inherit the business. She just didn't like Pokemon at all. Although Tommy was forced to reveal that he did in fact have Pokemon when one day, when they were just chilling in the garden, Tommy had left his Torchic out of its Pokeball, and when Miss Grimm saw it, she knew that it must have been Tommy's, and she began to physically beat him up for having a Pokemon. Damn, she even abused her husband too? Holy fuck. She's a fucking cunt, right? Anyways, despite their supposed connection, Miss Grimm threatened to not marry Tommy if he didn't give up his Pokemon and his coordinating, as Tommy was forced to reveal this as well. So, Tommy, being the simp that he was, gave up his dream to be a coordinator and gave up his Pokemon to marry him. Or at least, he agreed to do that so that he could get married. However, he didn't actually give up his coordinating and Pokemon training dreams, as his love for Pokemon, including his Dusclops, was far, far too great. So, in the late hours of the night, he would put on the Phantom disguise, and he would enter contests in this Phantom disguise that took place at night. Or he would enter day ones if Miss Grimm was out for the day and wouldn't know, and also he would train his Dusclops while wearing the Phantom disguise. Eventually, though, Tommy gave up coordinating for good when his secret became too much emotionally for him to bear, so he therefore hid his Phantom costume away, intending to never use it again. A few years later, however, Timmy was born, and he got into Pokemon, because, the entire world, aside from Miss Grimm, it seemed, had to like Pokemon in some way. But of course, Timmy's mom forced him to suppress his love for Pokemon. He eventually couldn't one day, though, when one night he found a Duskull all by itself and decided to bring it home, not wanting it to have to live on its own. Very happy to save it from solitude, but when he brought the Duskull home, his mother, of course, got mad and told him he couldn't keep it, demanding him to focus on studying to inherit the family business instead. Timmy was left very sad by this, so he took Duskull into an alley to cry and say goodbye to it, even though he didn't want to. But Timmy was eventually found by Tommy, since Timmy's mother had ordered Tommy to go find him since he had run off, and after hearing what had happened from Timmy's perspective, Tommy apologized on his wife's behalf and quickly ran into the house and managed to get his old Phantom costume and fix it up a little bit to make it more modern before giving it to Timmy, telling Timmy that he knew how he felt, explaining how his mother had forbade him from having Pokemon as well, and suggested that Timmy put on this Phantom disguise to train the Duskull in secret and disguise himself while competing in contests, so Timmy's mother would never discover that he was raising Pokemon, and would hopefully never pick up on Timmy's identity, even though she was currently now. When the exposition dump was done, Ash and the gang really felt bad for Timmy, empathizing with what he was going through, as Tommy then explained that Timmy had in fact become a coordinator now, so he was extremely worried recently when Miss Grimm started suspecting that the Phantom was involved with Timmy, or could have even been Timmy, especially since the Verdant Turf contest was approaching very soon, and if Timmy was going to enter it, then he had an even higher chance of being found out, since he would have to be gone while the Phantom would be at the contest, which would raise Miss Grimm's suspicions even more. Ash suggests that Tommy and Timmy just explain that they really did love Pokemon, and basically force Miss Grimm to like Pokemon, or divorce Tommy and leave Timmy. But Tommy was against this, as he didn't want to lose his wife, despite this disagreement that they had, and he also didn't want Timmy to lose his mother. Although at the same time, Tommy did want Timmy to really participate in this Verdant Turf Town contest, and he didn't know what to do. Ash and the gang didn't know what to do either, wishing they could help, but suddenly Brock came up with an idea. We then see Timmy in his room, sitting with the Phantom costume on his desk, and he sighed, looking at how bad his hand looked, when suddenly, as he was hoping to himself that his mother hadn't quite figured out the truth, that he was the Phantom somehow, he was startled when he heard a knock on the door, and Tommy and Ash and the gang came in, leading Timmy to freak out, recognizing Ash and the gang, and believing them to be friends with his mother, so he thought that they were coming in to try and force him to study as well, or perhaps expose his identity, so he places his hands over the costume to hide it, although Tommy then tells him to stop, assuring him that Ash and the gang were there to help him enter the Verdant Turf contest, also telling Tommy that Ash and the gang had a plan to make sure that Timmy's mother wouldn't find out about his identity, so Timmy could enter the contest without having to worry, and Timmy became very excited about this, stating that it was his dream to enter this verdant turf contest. It turns out that when Timmy's mother stormed off, it was because she had went back in her limo to go back to her company, although she was now on her way back, driving back home. Or rather, she was being driven home by her butler, but nonetheless, she was looking out the window at her surroundings when the limo stopped at a light, and when she looked out the window, she saw a mother giving her daughter her first Pokemon, a Poochyena, explaining to her daughter that she should train it hard so that one day she could compete with it in contests, and the girl was immensely excited to become best friends with a new Pokemon and participate in contests. Miss Grimm then sighs with guilt, which she was beginning to feel, as she wondered if maybe she should let Timmy have Pokemon after all, after seeing how much joy it brought to that girl. Miss Grimm then arrived back at her mansion, and the first thing she saw was May and Max out in the front yard, helping Skitty practice its juggling act, as Skitty continued to use Double Slap to juggle balls. But right as Miss Grimm stepped out of the limousine to talk to May and Max, the black petal whirlwind picked up once again. And sure enough, the Phantom appeared atop the balcony of the mansion, although unbeknownst to Timmy's mom. The Phantom this time was actually Brock in disguise, and Timmy had taught Brock how to do the whirlwind with black petals. Ash and the gang's plan had now been put into action, and May continued the plan by pretending to be frightened by Brock. And then Ash suddenly came out of the mansion as well, and stated how the Phantom must have been at the mansion to cause trouble. Just then, Brock, in the Phantom disguise, challenged May to a battle, since she was a coordinator, and that was basically their plan, to have Brock start a fake battle with May. And also, Timmy and Tommy came out of the mansion as well, in a hurry to see what was going on, which in turn made Miss Grimm think that Timmy couldn't have possibly been the Phantom, since the Phantom and Timmy were in different places, or so it seemed, right? Because Brock was in his disguise. Ash and May then winked at each other, knowing that their plan was going extremely well, as Miss Grimm simply looked on dumbfounded that Timmy wasn't the Phantom, as Brock continued to challenge May to a battle, when suddenly a fishing line from a fishing rod grabbed his mask and tried to pull it off, as Brock tried to keep it on. We then see Jessie and James and Meowth in the Meowth balloon above the mansion, with James being the one with the fishing rod trying to pull the mask off of Brock because they thought that he was the genuine Phantom, and they wanted to reveal the Phantom so that they could get the reward, being hopefully the expensive rings from Timmy's mother. Team Rocket revealed this plan while doing their motto, dressing up as Phantoms in the process, and also having Wobbuffet jump out from atop a moon. Yeah, their mottos were weird, we already know that. And this led May to interrupt their motto, yelling at them to stop ruining their plan since it was going fine, although May quickly shuts her mouth because she realized that Miss Grimm had heard this and began to wonder what plan May was talking about, and obviously it would be bad if Miss Grimm found out about the plan. Jessie then sent out for her Seviper, while James sent out his Cacnea, who of course prickled him first, in an attempt to stop Brock, and unmask him to reveal his identity, as Seviper uses Wrap, which prevented Brock from using his arms to try and keep the mask on, which in turn allowed James to deploy his fishing rod to pull the mask off, since Brock couldn't prevent it, as Meowth cheered. However, Brock bit the fishing rod string to prevent it from reaching his mask and pulling it off. Ash tried to have Pikachu use Thunderbolt on Seviper to stop it from wrapping Brock, although he stopped when Timmy pointed out that if Ash used Thunderbolt, then it would likely injure Brock as well. So this gave James, who was pissed off due to him not being able to pull the mask off, to be able to send out his Cacnea towards Brock, having it go in for a pin missile. But before Cacnea could go up to Brock, May had Skitty use Blizzard. And while this does blow away both Cacnea and Seviper, it also hits Brock as well, as May looks down in shame as Brock falls to the ground from the balcony, also causing his mask to fall off right in front of Miss Grimm, revealing his face to Miss Grimm momentarily, although Brock quickly takes action and puts the mask back on, hoping that Miss Grimm didn't see. Anyways, Seviper, which had let go of Brock, as well as Cacnea, were now falling into the Meowth balloon after being blown away by the blizzard, and right as they did, Ash used Thunderbolt since it would no longer harm Brock, which knocked out Cacnea and Seviper and sent Team Rocket blasting off. With Team Rocket gone, Miss Grimm was then surprised as Brock laughed and rushed off into the forest, stumbling as he went, as Ash, Max, and May claimed that the Phantom got away once again. Tommy began to panic, knowing that Timmy's mother must have seen Brock's face when the mask momentarily fell off, but much to Tommy's surprise, Miss Grimm did, in fact, see that Brock was the Phantom, but she actually just was glad about this, not caring that Brock was the Phantom, just happy that her original theory was right, being that Timmy was not the Phantom, and she just happily walked off to return to her work, happy that Timmy wasn't the Phantom, and shuts the door behind her. Ash then calls out to Brock, saying the coast was clear, and this leads Brock to come out from the bushes, confirming if it really was clear, not believing Ash, thinking maybe he was forced to say that, but Ash and the gang confirmed that everything was clear now, and explained what had just happened. Timmy then thanked everyone, especially Brock, for his help, exclaiming that now that his mother wasn't suspicious of him, he could enter the verdant turf contest with no trouble, and he was going to try his best to win, although May revealed that she was going to be competing in the verdant turf contest tomorrow as well. So this led May and Timmy to realize that they would be battling each other in the contest, most likely, if they both made it far, and promised that they would not back down against each other, therefore forming a rivalry. Wow, no way. May has more rivals than Ash in this series. Is she the goddamn protagonist?